out that the sun shines down its power to all the world and makes the wind blow strong as it will. I wonder hope gentle rains can fall upon the land, so lovely earth can stay lovely still. Hello everybody, this is a special from Energy Week, and we have Susan
Walker,
whose name I forgot in less than 10 seconds, Jed and Cimbria Badenhausen, and they're going to be talking about
the Turning Point Gratitude Project.
The Turning Point Gratitude Project. And why don't we just start talking about that?
That would be great. And we really appreciate you having us on, George and Tom, very much. So, as you know, as you both know, because I work with you on various committees and things, I moved back here September of last year. And I had attended the MBA, the Marlboro MBA in Managing for Sustainability, and I graduated in 2009, and I'd spent a lot of time integrating into the community here. A colleague of mine in the cohort, in the pioneer cohort of the MBA, started the green drinks, the Brattleboro green drinks, and so we really integrated. We're both into energy efficiency and things like that. So I fell in love with Brattleboro. I just love it. It's home.
It seems so difficult.
Yeah, exactly. It's definitely home
Such
for
an
me.
ugly duckling of a community.
So when I arrived back here, I was just so grateful, really, that I wanted to show my gratitude by assisting a human service organization in developing a permaculture landscape, which is an edible landscape that can manage stormwater, drought. It's a really it's a deliberate disturbance of the land. Instead of going onto the land and saying, I want a swimming pool here, and even though it's real like sloped or whatever, it's not working out, I'm going to put my swimming pool here. Or I want to plant a tree here, but it's really not getting enough water there, so it dies. So it's really looking at the lay of the land through observing and interacting with it. And from there, you determine where things would work best. So I started looking around for an organization to partner with as a service project. And I talked to a couple of groups in town, and it just wasn't the right time for them. So then somebody suggested that I call Susie Walker at the Turning Point.
Who we happen to have here.
Exactly.
How about that?
You don't even have to call.
I know, exactly. And so I called Susie and I said, this is going to sound like a crazy idea, and I'm going to ask you to just have faith in me right now and just listen to this crazy idea. And she said, well, this is right where we are, and I'll let you take over from there.
It's I keep telling people our word for this year is serendipity, because you may know that Turning Point just moved back to downtown. We bought a building in January of 2014, and then we spent the whole next year working on it because it was a real fixer-upper. It had been damaged in Tropical Storm Irene.
And where is this building?
It's on the corner of Elm Street and Flat Streets, right across the, diagonally across from the New England Youth Theater. It's a big
Is
yellow
this
house on the corner.
Okay.
Yeah. So we had been working on it all year, and we had just moved in early February when Cimbria called around that time. And so we were in the building, and we were still finishing up the kitchen and some other things. But we knew that we also had some outside work to do and a lot of landscaping. So she called at just that moment that we were in the building and looking ahead at the next work that we had to do. So I said, well, sure, tell me more. And so then she described to me the certificate program that we've set up and how we're involving Turning Point stakeholders, volunteers, and guests in learning about this process. So we're doing that in June and July, and then once we have a design in August, we'll do an implementation, and our grand reopening celebration is scheduled for September.
Well, what is Turning Point? What's the basic
Okay.
thing that you're doing here?
Sure. Turning Point is a recovery center. It's a peer recovery center for people in recovery from various addictions.
Okay.
And that means we don't do clinical or therapeutic work. We have our friends at the Brattleboro Retreat and the HCRS and Habit OpCo and the various organizations we partner with. But what we offer is peer support, and that means people with lived experience of having been through an addiction and being on the other side in recovery. And we define being in recovery as if you're in recovery if you say you're in recovery. So whatever path to recovery works for you, we want to support you in that. And we also include family members and friends and coworkers in that process of recovery, but because we know that when people are in the addictive, they're still in the disease, there's a lot of turmoil, and that often affects families, friends, coworkers. So those people are in recovery through programs like Al-Anon and Nar-Anon and other things. So
Is the addiction to substances, or are there other addictions?
there are other addictions. It's often substance abuse, but it can also be gambling or over shopping or
Internet?
or internet. Yes, indeed. So food, yeah. So whatever is disrupting your life in that way, we can offer supports, and we're a volunteer-led organization. I'm a almost full-time director, and I have a part-time volunteer coordinator. And everybody else is a volunteer. And at this point, we have about 160 or 170 hours of volunteer effort that go into keeping the center open every week so that we can serve the people in recovery.
That's a lot.
Yeah, it is. We've got a wonderful, wonderful volunteer
Very
group.
dedicated.
Volunteers and people with a little bit more training called recovery coaches, which is our friend Jed here is a wonderful volunteer, and he does some groups for us.
He's even volunteered to wear a T-shirt.
Yes, he has.
I'm curious about another thing too. Do you have any idea of what percentage of people suffer from addictions?
Oh boy, I think it's something like 1 in 10. That's
1
a
in 10
statistic
people.
I've heard. But it's hard to get
Which means
statistics.
that probably 1 in 2 families,
Yeah.
unless you're going to go a little bit past the core family, you're going to find that probably almost every family has got somebody in it who has got an addictive problem. So this is something that really affects everybody at the family level, everybody at the economic level. It is general in our society. And of course, it's just one of many problems that people could have. So, I don't think it's a good idea to point a finger at somebody and say, that person's an addict. I'm better.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
I'm not better.
It's a health issue, and that's what we've come
It's a
to
health
see more
issue.
and more, especially the last couple of years or so, ever since the governor did his the State of the State address and focused on opiates. There's been a lot of really exciting and important work in the state, and we're one of 12 recovery centers in the state of Vermont, and so we get to work together as a system to address some of these issues, and it's been really exciting.
As I think about Energy Week, we were talking about 1 person in 10. It's not 1 in 10, it's all of us.
Yeah.
We're all addicted to energy misuse. We're, really, this is a thing that we could all think about.
So our society's addicted to energy.
Our society is addicted to
Misuse of energy.
misuse of energy. There's no question about it.
There's a whole school of thought that says it's behavioral related. So we're trained from a very young age to not think about every time we turn on the light or every time we plug something in. But I can tell you I've retrained myself, so nothing's plugged in until I'm going to use it in my house.
That's an
And I have a
interesting
very minimal use of anything. And people can't believe, I've had $6 and $12 energy bills. But that's from my hot water here, pretty much.
Right.
I use cold water for most washing. I went to culinary school, and they train you that it's not actually the water temperature when you're washing the dishes. It's the lather of the soap that gets rid of most of the germs. And so washing it in hot or cold, you're not bringing the temperature up enough to actually sterilize. So it doesn't really matter. I mean, it's good for fat and things like that. But if I have just a glass or a plate that I'm washing, I use cold water, and I just make sure there's a good lather. And so it's all, and much of it is behavioral, and so it's ignorance really, but if people understood, if you unplug things when you're not using them, including lamps, toasters, washing machines, dryers, they're all using the vampire power. And if you don't allow that to happen, if you retrain yourself, then you can really reduce the cost and what's coming from the grid.
Okay. So what is this project that you're?
So I want to talk a little bit about a comment that you made about you're in recovery and I'm not, haha, that sort of.
Yes.
It's called stigma, okay?
Yes.
And it's very present. It's
very
present in
present,
mental illness.
And anybody who thinks that he isn't that far, just the tiniest distance from some kind of problem, should really re-examine
well,
himself.
challenges come to everyone in their lives.
They do indeed.
You know, I had a long period of my life where I was performing to other people's standards. People had expectations of me. I grew up in Westchester, and people expected me to have
and you
a corporate world. You know,
That's why she loves Brattleboro.
yeah, exactly. And so I'm in recovery from doing what other people want me to do.
That's a very interesting point.
And it's difficult, you
Yeah.
know, and I think it's I don't want to minimize what other people are doing to fight the addiction to substances, because
Yes.
that's very painful.
Yes.
And I know people very close to me who are recovering alcoholics or drug addicts, or for me, it's one part of this project. So I can talk about the permaculture principles, and one of the principles is value the margins, and that's one reason why I wanted to work with a human service organization. And this means that the people who are not, or you can look at it as a field, the birds like the parts of the trees that are on the meadow side.
Yes.
They like the
Okay.
edge, they like the margin.
Okay. Yes.
Plants thrive there.
Yes.
Insects thrive there because they have access to
Right.
multiple ecosystems.
Right.
And I want to say that, you know, we're marginalizing people who may have a lot to offer to us, and
There's no question of this.
Exactly.
Really, if you look at it,
exactly.
there are people who are brilliant in one way or another who are at the margin.
Many times their brilliance and their being different in that way brought them pain, and
Yes.
they're self-medicating with a
Yes.
substance
Yes.
to deaden that pain.
Yes.
And if we were to really celebrate everybody's individuality, then I think, you know, everybody would benefit. And so, you know, so what really is wonderful about partnering with Turning Point is that all of the human service organizations that I wanted, that I thought I was going to have to pick and choose, like, do I work with the homeless, do I work with youth, who do I work with?
Right.
After speaking to Susan, I went, oh my gosh, I'm working with
They're all here.
everybody. Everybody's here, you know, and not only that, but people who have been through some really challenging things and have developed skill sets
Right.
where they can deal with challenges more healthily. So they're going to set examples for other people. So I was thrilled about that. You know, there's so many things about this project that are serendipitous, you know.
Right. Right.
So I've met some truly wonderful people through this program, and I approach everyone as I would approach you or Tom, you know, because I really believe everybody's got something to offer. And so there are a couple of people involved in the actual certification course. We don't have a tremendous number of people, but it's not about quantity, it's about quality. And there are two people who are involved that are, for me, the epitome of who I wanted to serve with this project. One person's an older person. He's pretty much the caretaker of the site. When the weeds are getting too tall, he's the one out there whacking them. He's, you know, he really opens up every morning, and he helps make it a home. Everybody can depend on him. They know he's there. You know, and I call him the soul of the Gratitude Project, really. And then we have the heart of the Gratitude Project, which is someone who's really excited, just totally plugged in, you know, and he's sitting next to me, and this is Jed. And I just, so I've got the heart and the soul of Turning Point involved in the certification program, and it's amazing. And we've got other people's satellites coming in because you're allowed to come for individual courses. So if Tom wanted to learn about hugelkultur, or if he wanted to learn about, you know, how to do a walkway or something else for his property, how to integrate plants with companion planting. You could just come, or if you want to learn about forests, you could come on the day that we're talking about forests and patterns. But there are at least 2 people and 2 stakeholders from Turning Point who are going to be certified, and that's really tremendous. And
Now, certified in what way?
So in permaculture design,
Okay.
there's a 72-hour course.
Okay.
That's 72 hours of study that is required. And then the other criteria are that you design your own personal project and you help design a group project.
Okay.
And so for 72 hours, Jed and a number of other people are going to be coming to every class. They can miss, I think you have to attend 80% of the studies.
Yeah.
And then you will graduate with a certificate in permaculture design that is
Okay.
accepted internationally.
Where is this being done?
So this is so the course is being run through the Turning Point site.
Okay.
We had the first day
Right
was
here in Brattleboro.
right here in Brattleboro. So June 2nd.
Okay.
We had our first class, and it was a get to know you, because permaculture also has social permaculture. It's about valuing the margins. It's about small and slow solutions. It's about minimizing waste. It's about celebrating the renewables. And so we told a little bit of our story, as much as we were comfortable with. We talked about what the goals are for the program and what we expect. And I asked people to be very clear about that, because I can't deliver it if they don't communicate that. So we had a great morning, and then we walked the site. And there's a set of permaculture principles. There's 12 principles, and there's 3 ethics. And that's care for people, care for the earth, and fair share. And so we talked about where we can see that existing, because in the beginning of the project, you don't talk about design. You talk about existing conditions. We want to fully understand where we are, what are the ecosystem services that are here, where is the siting for different things, where are we already seeing the principles manifesting. And we talked about the principles and got people thinking, because they need to talk about the principles or think about them in their daily life throughout the whole course. That's going to affect the value of their design. And then, go ahead, did you have a question, Tom?
Yeah, I'm thinking in terms of Turning Point as being a safe place for people in recovery to be. Is this program only going to be open to people in recovery, or is it going to be open to the world?
It's open to anybody.
Yeah.
Anybody can do it.
So now we've got a new, how would you say it, a new face of Turning Point.
We're integrated.
Yeah.
We want to
We're
be part of the
integrated.
community and
Yeah.
part of the neighborhood
Well,
that we're in.
I
And
think you could make a case for the idea that everybody's recovering from something.
Exactly. That's
Well,
I
yeah,
really agree
really.
with that. I really agree with that.
The world needs a turning point.
Everybody's
Yeah.
recovering from their parents.
Exactly. Well, and that's what I love about the Turning Point system. You know, I know someone who went through the 12-step program, and Bill W. is like a god to him, you know.
Absolutely.
And that's great. But Turning Point says, great, that's wonderful. You love Bill W., you love the 12, steps. But here's somebody who's going through maybe addiction to opiates or something, and their recovery is really a lifelong journey, and it may involve something that can help them medically so that they can still remain healthy. And so, some people may say, well, they're not in recovery because they're taking a substance, and the point is that they're doing their recovery as best they can to have a full life and lead a full life
Right.
and integrate into the
Right.
community.
Right.
And so I've even made this available through Brattleboro Time Trade, because this is a tremendous organization, and they've celebrated that they're trying to expand the offerings that are available to the members. And I think everybody should go out and join Brattleboro Time Trade, because it's amazing what you can do. You can have pretty much almost anything, assistance in almost anything for that through Brattleboro Time Trade. So if anyone has an EBT card, which is a food stamp card, and they want to take any of the courses, they can sign up for free. The registration has a place to put your EBT card number, and Susie and I are the only ones who will know that anybody is joining through EBT. You'll be treated exactly the same as anyone else. So there's Brattleboro Time Trade, there's EBT cards, and then if the general public wants to come and take some courses, they're welcome to do that, and there's a minimal fee for that, which is listed. Yeah,
But it's not exorbitant.
no.
It's minimal, and it's really to help with our expenses, because Susie's time is involved in this, my time, and this is a service project for me. I'm not asking for any funds. If I were able to be paid for some of this, that would be great. But I'm doing it whether or not I receive any funds. We did receive a grant from New England Grassroots Education Fund, and some of that is going towards my time in setting up the program. Some of that is reserved for honorariums for guest speakers, and some of that is going to expenses for the program. So I'm going to make a plea. We're looking for materials. We're looking for, I think I have a contributor for compost and leaves. So, and I haven't told Susie this yet, but I talked to someone yesterday and they said, we'll bring you all you want. We need some materials. We need, and I'll know more about that once the design's done. And then, Jed, can you think of anything that we might need in the way of donations?
I think we want to incorporate an outside cooking area. And that's still in the works. We don't know if we're going to need that yet. But either way, we are looking for a grill. If anybody could donate a grill, that would be fantastic.
Yeah.
The ecological living room is the key to this design. So when you're doing a permaculture design, the client will establish certain minimals.
The question I'm going to ask, first question I'm going to ask is, can you describe permaculture?
Permaculture is...
Stop?
Yeah.
Oh, yes, I can.
You can, okay. So let's do that. Tom, you've got me on?
You're right on there.
Okay,
Right in the middle.
I'm going to start this up again. What time is it? It's 11:30, okay. That's okay, I can just tell Roland it's 6 minutes. Okay, so I'm going again. Okay, Cimbria, I've got a question for you. So just so people know what's going on here, what is permaculture?
Okay, permaculture is a way of looking at the land and observing the land, interacting with the land, and asking the land in various places what it wants to be. So you may be wanting to place a pond somewhere on your property. What you do is you live with it. You sit with it in the rain, or you come out just after a rain.
I love this.
And you look where the lowest point is in the property, where you're naturally gathering water.
Yeah.
And then that's where you put the pond. And you can tell, if it's drying up very quickly, that means that it usually has a good percolation rate, or there's a lot of space there underneath, and the water table is not very high.
Right.
So, there are ways to tell. You dig in and you can see where the water table is, or you take some of the soil and you dig a hole, and as quickly as it disappears, that's the percolation rate, and things like that.
This reminds me a little bit of some advice that I got on a garden, which is if you want to know what to plant, look at your weeds and see what the weeds are.
Exactly.
Because if you've got a lot of Queen Anne's lace, then you can bet that you can grow carrots.
Exactly.
And if you've got wild grapes growing, you might not like the taste of the wild grapes, but you can grow domesticated grapes.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And also, if you're thinking about putting in fruit trees or something, you can look at what other trees are growing there. And you may not want those trees, but you can put fruit trees in there.
Or nuts.
Or nuts. Something that I really want to talk about today, George, is the stormwater issue in Brattleboro.
All right.
On July 21st, I'm going to be speaking at the library, Brooks Memorial Library, about stormwater management through permaculture practice.
Okay.
I did present this. It was during the day, so a lot of people couldn't make it. I got a lot of people emailing me or Facebooking me saying, I wanted to come, but I couldn't do it at that time. Are you going to do it again? So the town of Brattleboro is helping me put this seminar on. And it's going to run from 7 to 8:30 on the 21st of July. And what I'll be talking about is what happened with Irene.
Right.
And how we can modify this so that it doesn't happen again to this extreme using permaculture. And it's a decentralized practice rather than many towns are using things like modifying river flow or expanding rivers or shrinking rivers or rebuilding bridges or changing bridge alignments.
The whole idea is catch all the water as fast as you can and dump it into the river. And of course, what does that produce?
Flooding.
Floods.
Exactly. And so if you use permaculture and you specifically talk to the people who live at the top of the watershed
Right.
of the whetstone,
Yep.
then you give them a small amount of money. I'm talking $5,000, $10,000, and you help them build stormwater management systems on their property. Not only does it then reduce the amount of water that's going down to the next ring of properties, but it helps them control stormwater from their buildings. It helps them prepare for drought if there is a couple of weeks like we had with no rain. People who are using these systems, their plants are going to thrive because these systems capture water on the site and then are available to anything that's growing on the site. And you can also plant on top of these stormwater management systems. So one example is hugelkulture, and we talked about hugelkulture on the
How do
in
you
the second
spell it?
class. That's Hugel, right, culture.
Okay.
And the Germans use a K for culture.
Okay.
And what it does is it can be done at any size. You can make them very small, or you can make them, as large as this room if you wanted to. And what you do is you pile woody material inside a ditch that's appropriate to whatever the proportion is. And then you put in organic matter on top of that, and you make a mound.
Right.
And you can use it for a privacy screen if you want. We could put this on the outside of Turning Point if we wanted to keep people out, or if anybody wanted to keep people out. Or you can use them in different ways. But you always put them as high on your property or the watershed as you possibly can first, because in permaculture you stop the water at the highest place. You slow it, you sink it, you spread it. That re-injects the aquifers on the property or the water storage, and it also provides you with ready materials. So the woody material inside that mound, so it's a swale that's on the upper slope.
Right.
And then there's a berm on the lower slope,
Right.
which then slows that water even more, so that the water needs to go over it. It needs to be so quick or so full that it's going over the berm. So the water comes in, it saturates the wood that's in that swale, and then it then goes over the berm. And you can plant anything you want in that berm.
Yeah, the swale is, most people don't know what a swale is.
It's a divot. It's a ditch or a divot,
ditch.
and it's built on contour. So most people say, well, why doesn't the water just run out of the swale? Because it's built on contour. You use an A-frame level, and you build it, and it's actually on contour. So your land might be on contour here, it might be level on here, but so that's the way that you build the swale, is with that curve, and then there might be another curve here.
In other words, if you could fill the swale, the water level would be just in there. It's like a long, thin pond. If you could fill it.
Yes, once it's full, it would be. So you can either use the woody material, as I was saying, which then absorbs water and provides that water to plants that you're planting around that area, or you could leave it open and you can plant plants in there that like water.
Right.
Blueberries,
Right.
watercress,
Right.
mint, lavender.
Yes, a lot of things
There's
will
lots
just
of
grow
things
in
love
water.
water.
Yep. Yeah, and this, what this puts me in mind of is vernal ponds.
Exactly. Yeah.
And the vernal ponds, people don't even think about vernal ponds. They're natural. They're all over the place, and they're typically destroyed when we get our hands on what's going in nature, is these vernal ponds. And what happens? The reason they're called vernal ponds is because when the rain is falling in the spring, they fill up and they make a pond. Literally, most people would just call it a puddle, but it could be 3 feet wide and 100 yards long, and it would run around a contour in a hillside or something, and it is an entirely different ecosystem.
Exactly.
And that gives, as you were saying, those marginal birds.
Exactly.
It gives all
Salamanders.
Salamanders, little tree frogs grow up in there.
Right.
There are fairy shrimp.
Right.
You can have fairy shrimp in a vernal pond in Vermont.
Right.
You're not going to eat them, but somebody does. And the life cycles of these things are just so interesting. Those shrimp will lay eggs, and then the vernal pond goes dry.
Exactly.
And what happens to the eggs? Well, they don't mind drying out.
They
They're
go
designed
dormant.
for that.
They go dormant.
And if there's a little bit of a wind and they get picked up in the dust, they get carried to some other part of the state where they can form a new colony of fairy shrimp in a different vernal pond. That's the way it works. This is the way nature is.
Yeah.
And the ecology of that is something that we can make use of.
So yeah, when you have that saturated wood in there and you plant either trees or crops, you could plant turnips and potatoes on them. That stored water, and the more decomposed the wood is, the more water it absorbs. So as it rots, it gives the nutrition to the land, and it absorbs water and feeds that water.
So you've got a potato crop that doesn't need to be watered all that much.
Exactly, whatever it is doesn't need to be watered. And in times of drought, you're the only person in the area that has something growing.
It's awful to think about. Everybody sits around envying you because you can eat.
Well, you also have an edible landscape.
You have an edible landscape.
Right. And so what if you don't mind, George and Tom, I'd love to give Jed a chance to speak because...
Jed's been sitting there
Yes,
waiting.
the poor guy. Let him talk.
Yes,
He's even got a microphone on.
He's even got a microphone on.
We had this planned in advance.
I've learned patience.
Yeah. So I'm really grateful to Jed for being here today because I really consider him the heart of the Turning Point Gratitude Project. He's if I had one person in this program that I really believed was going to benefit from it and really institute it in their life, it would be Jed. And so I want to thank you so much for being willing to come out and talk about your experience.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much, and thank you, Susie, and thank you guys for giving me the opportunity to talk a little bit about this. I'm 3 years in recovery from a heroin addiction, and when I came over to Brattleboro from Bennington, I quickly took advantage of the Turning Point and its programs. And this was when it was up on Putney Road. There was a lot of time in my life to fill. I was homeless, and it was just a very hard time in my life, which a lot of people go through in early recovery. And each of us hopefully will find our path. And when we find our individual paths, we have a better chance at daily success with recovery, if it's from alcoholism or cocaine or food, television, computer,
self-esteem issues,
self-esteem, anything. And so coming to the Turning Point, it's kind of like, I like to view it as a hub. It's a hub, and there's all these different programs. There's recovery coaching, which I took advantage of right away, and my coach Elmer and I became very, very close, and he helped me, guide me along the way in early recovery. I took advantage of the 12-step programs that run after hours, the All Recovery group that's run during the day, and so growing and learning through these different programs that the Turning Point offers was very crucial to myself and my recovery. I gained hope, self-esteem, confidence, working closely with Brian, who is the recovery coach coordinator and volunteer coordinator, was very beneficial, and it still is. And hearing about the Permaculture project, that once we moved, and it was just like when there's a drought and water just comes back into the picture, and that's what it was coming back into town from Putney Road. Is there was just all this life, there was all this motivation. Not that it wasn't there before, because it was, but there was more space. So there's more space, more time to do things. And the Permaculture project I heard about, and I have a very busy schedule, and I was kind of skeptical about it at first, but then I took advantage of it, and And like you were saying, Cimbria, about, you know, one of the first things to do is to take an inventory of the land when you're working on a project.
Right.
And applying that into my life, that first day of understanding what permaculture was, I, you know, quickly looked at my recovery and how at the beginning I had to understand myself and I had to understand what was going on. I had to take an inventory. I had to see which areas of my life I was capable of doing different things. Using, I don't want to say talents, but using just different aspects of me to the full, taking full advantage of them. And then slow, baby steps. And I've come to a life right now where I have daily success in recovery. I like to say if I do the same thing tomorrow that I did yesterday, I'll be okay. And I think applying that to permaculture, you know, it's something that I'm doing. Cimbria has a lot of motivation, a lot of enthusiasm. Our second class, we went to a 14-acre homestead, which was part of a greater 90-acre. This was in Guilford, and just seeing how they took advantage of the property, of the sunlight. They had a hard time when they bought the property of, you know, how to capture the most sunlight. They don't have a working toilet. They use everything, you know.
They have humanure.
Yes, humanure, which is very interesting.
Everything's interesting to Jed.
Yeah, and it doesn't smell. You think it would smell, but it does not smell. And it's just fantastic that goats, a working horse. They made their living by the husband was a very talented woodworker, so he would sell his projects, and just how they took advantage of the property, how they had really no waste. I mean, they were practicing hugelkulture in some places, and I think they had a plan to do more. So it was just fantastic, and especially at this point in my recovery, seeing these options, it's hope. It's hope, and I think, you know, hope is a catalyst in recovery.
You know, if I can break in here, it sounds like you've got something to teach everybody. And, you know, I think about the fact that, and we've been hearing this for years, the United States is addicted to oil. The United States is addicted to a whole bunch of different things. The United States is addicted to insecticides and herbicides and you name it. And permaculture is a way of looking at the world that says we need to have something be sustainable.
Well,
and if we aren't sustainable, then we're terminal. That's just, those are the two choices. But the world, the United States in particular, needs turning point. And nationally. Because it's addicted. And this is, you know, I think this is the reason why this is so appropriate to a show which is normally about energy and climate change, because here we are. We've got the addiction, and this is the way we deal with it.
Well, this is all about, you know, remediating climate change and adapting to climate change, because when you are using permaculture on your site, and anybody can do it to a small degree or to a large degree, when you're using permaculture, what you're doing is you're adding good. So most people say, I want to do no harm. I'm going to like not hurt anymore. I'm going to turn off my lights. I'm going to stop using oil if I can. That's a good place to be, but it's better if you can actually build on what nature's already doing. So
Right.
ecosystem services that are successful, and you have to look for them. You have to see the way they're working. What permaculture does is it helps you understand the systems behind what's going on in the ecosystem.
Right.
And then it teaches you, okay, so this is a great place for nut trees. Let's put in 4 more nut trees or 5 more nut trees. This is a great place to capture water. Let's capture water and then let's plant something. Let's use sheep to cut the grass instead of using a lawnmower. You know, it's adding value to what's working correctly. It's systems thinking, and it's all about not doing a harmful disturbance, but doing a deliberate disturbance that is actually going to add value. So
Right.
that's what we're doing at Turning Point. You know, Turning Point was under 15 feet of water in Irene. That whole Flat and Frost Street area right near the Whetstone was under, you know, more than 10 feet of water. And what we're doing is we're going to be looking at part of a, so the client has asked for an ecological living room, an outdoor living room for people. That would be great if we could get somebody to donate a grill. And water management is part of any project that I work on. And so this is what we need desperately. We've got HCRS, which is right above, and then we've got up to Western Avenue, and then we've got West Bratt, and all the water that's coming out of there is ending up on Flat Street. And so if we modified properties and stop the water up there, and then another group of properties a little bit further down, and another group of properties, by the time it got to Turning Point, we'd really be saving water for our own use. We wouldn't have to remedy all of the problems of stormwater.
But those people who had altered their property as part of this project would be benefiting as well.
Absolutely.
Everyone.
They are the primary beneficiaries of anything that they do. And it could be that all of a sudden their basement stops flooding.
That's an advantage.
You know, if you're on a ledge and all the water's going into your ledge or off down to Flat Street eventually,
Yeah.
we can help you fix that so that you're not getting any more water in your basement anymore.
Right.
And on the way down from Marlboro, intermediately, many, many times, we could generate electricity.
Absolutely, if we did it the right way.
If we did it the right
Yeah,
way.
yeah.
And it can be done the right way.
Absolutely, you know?
Yeah. We had Tori Weekers, who's my landlady and lives upstairs from me, found a catfish on Frost Street
Wow.
in the middle of the road after Irene, along with a crayfish and about 30 or 40 minnows.
Right.
And that catfish lived in a tank in our greenhouse for years. Poor thing died. It jumped out of the tank and we found it on the floor. But it had been, you know, that's where it had been.
Right.
And that flooding that happened is, I think, almost unquestionably the result, in part, of climate change, but also in part of changes that have been made to the land that concentrate floodwaters.
Well, traditional site planning is you slope the land to go out to the street. Water, not my business. Anything that comes on here, I'm going to give to my neighbor. And that's why all of the water's ending up on Flat Street. What permaculture says is, are you kidding? I'm not going to give away water. I'm going to keep that water, and I'm going to use that water to help my ecosystem thrive.
Right.
And then what does eventually go down to my neighbor, that's giving them some water to work on what they want to have succeed on their property. But it's just personal responsibility.
But it's also no floods for them, no drought for me.
Exactly. And you keep, in permaculture, you keep your resources on the property. You don't give your leaves to Wyndham Solid Waste. You keep your leaves and you compost them. You keep anything. If all of a sudden a tree comes down, dig a hugelkultur. Put that wood back in your, seriously, anything that comes from your property, you try to keep on your property. And that feeds the property, because right now what we're doing is we're cutting the grass, we're taking it out, and then we have to feed the grass because we've taken all the nutrients out.
Right. And in some cases, what we have been doing, I had a friend who brought 2 IPOs to market in Florida for a plant that burned waste.
No.
And the two plants that he had, both of them came online simultaneously. Both of them closed within 2 weeks.
Oh.
And
Wow.
and the reason was because they were closed down by the EPA because the amount of dioxin they were putting
Right,
out.
right.
And the dioxin they were putting out was there because of the grass they were burning.
Right.
And the grass burned to produce dioxin because it had insecticides in it.
Exactly.
And it's, you've got this huge...
It's a vicious circle here.
Yeah.
Oh,
It
it's
is.
terrible.
Oh, it
and
really
the
is.
fact is that all of this thing of insecticides and all the rest of that is unnecessary. When was the last time you saw a monarch butterfly?
Well, I saw one not the other day, but I saw butterflies landing on milkweed the other day.
Did you?
Yeah, it
That's
wasn't
special.
a monarch, but it was something else. And milkweed should be part of any property if you can do
Milkweed
it.
should be part of a property, but
Yeah.
unfortunately Monsanto is making insecticides that are killing it.
Right, yeah.
And so the monarch butterfly, which depends on things like this for
Right,
migrations,
right.
is suffering. And of course that means that another butterfly, the viceroy butterfly, is not going to get the protection that it gets from being like a monarch because the birds aren't going to see the
Right,
monarchs.
exactly.
And so you've got this thing going through nature. When I was a kid, monarch butterflies were everywhere.
Everywhere, yeah.
Everywhere. I
Yeah.
have not seen one this year. I don't think I saw one last year.
Ever since the Europeans settled this continent, we've been trying to modify nature to do our bidding.
Exactly.
And we're successful for a short period of time.
Yeah.
But over the long run, Mother Nature always wins.
And we can be the winners too.
We can
That's
be the
what's
winners
great
too,
about
and
permaculture.
that's what you're talking
You know,
about, is being in harmony with Mother Nature.
Yeah.
In heart.
And the other big piece about this is the stakeholder engagement. So the two people that I talked about, the soul and the heart of the Gratitude Project, they are the stakeholders. They are at Turning Point almost all the time. Whenever I go there, they're both there. And they're the ones who are going to decide what this looks like. They are going to decide where the living room is, what plants they want to have around there. They're going to keep in mind what Susie and the board have said we specifically want to have, which is like a patio and some other things. And they want stormwater management. But other than that, these guys get to decide what their space is going to look like. And that's empowering. And
Yes.
the skills that they're learning, that I think both of them are already very skilled because they're both emotionally intelligent. I feel that they are because they're dealing very well with their world. And they're very easy to work with and they follow through and all of that. But they're going to get these opportunities to hone these skills and to show. And they're going to have an accomplishment that's, makes my goosebumps come up. The day that we go out there and we're going to be doing a plant swap in early August. And once we know what the design is, we will put out a call for plants. And people are welcome to bring to Turning Point's property the plants that they can donate to us and then to trade off the other plants that they have too many of, or to try to look for other plants that they want to take.
Now, what kinds of plants do you think you might be looking
Well,
for?
I don't want to go there yet because we're not in the design phase.
Yeah.
But traditionally, blueberries do very well.
Right.
We'll want some plants that like water, so iris might be good. Mints and lavenders and culinary herbs. There's an herb style. So I talked about valuing the edges. Many garden designs in permaculture are circular or have lots of edges. They weave a
Right.
lot. And so there may be an herb style because we have tons of stone and the problem is a solution. So we're going to use that stone in the design as much as we possibly can and it'll help reinforce soil and stuff. But we're going to be using the resources that are there on the property. We want to bring plants in, and we have some water issues we're going to have to look into managing. But it's really a chance for us to set up the property exactly the way these guys want it to be, and the other stakeholders in the property. So that's a really valuable piece.
I think utilizing, the part of permaculture, utilizing the land and what we have and growing, culinary herbs and vegetables. We do a community lunch every Wednesday, and that's open to anybody at noon, and it's where the volunteers come together and cook, and it's healthy and it's good, and we learn a lot too. But it's using those herbs and the vegetables for this, it would be will be very beneficial for us.
There will have to be some concerns, or I have some concerns about the soil. As you may know, the New England Youth Theater has been determined a brownfield because of the paint factory that maybe you guys knew when they were around. I don't know.
I didn't know it, but
Yeah.
no.
So I would have a hard time believing that none of the contaminants didn't jump over to the Turning Point space.
Well, not only that, but you've every house
Has lead paint,
has
things like
has-
that. Yeah.
You always have to question lead
Right.
paint, and chances are, if the house is older than a certain age, that's what was
78,
used.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so what we'll be doing is we'll be growing things like trees and larger bushes that can absorb the soil, and it doesn't necessarily go into the fruit of the tree. We'll be growing that in the Turning Point soil, but we'll
Right.
also be making raised beds in whatever designs that the group feels are appropriate for the site. And then we'll be growing the vegetables and the herbs and things in that new soil, so
Right.
that we will not be contaminating the food, so it will be healthy.
Right.
But Jed cooks, I hear, very well. So, you know, that's the sense of family and community, you know, and feeding the group with food that came from the site, having blueberries that people can pick. An edible landscape is really important. And Edible Brattleboro, some members have been plugged in and following us and are ready to help with the implementation, so that's really great.
This is really interesting, really kind of exciting.
Well, we're happy to come back and talk to you about things as they progress. We'll be doing, as Susie said, we'll be designing in July mostly. We'll be examining the site in June, designing in July, and implementing in August.
Is this going to be repeated?
I would love to repeat it.
I mean,
You
obviously.
could choose a different site.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
could choose a different site, and for the next one, I'd probably like to be compensated. But I would love to, you know, Susie's been very generous with her time. She's come to a number of the courses. She's gone and spoken to people about this. She's trying to write some grants. And I want to say thank you, because without an organization that's completely committed to the project, it can't happen. So if someone had an organization and their senior level, their board was really plugged in and can commit, then I'd be happy to talk to somebody about doing a project like this, especially if there's stormwater management involved.
Okay, what kinds of organizations, people, whatever, do you think
Well,
would be?
I'd love to do for-profits, you know, come in and help them design. So there's a couple of different models, business models for permaculture. My model is very community-oriented. It's very stakeholder engagement. It's the people who are using the site should be the ones who help contribute to the design of the site.
Right.
And it's a really great team-building experience for an organization. So if there's a store, or if there's, you know, I hear that there's going to be work done in the arch for Harmony parking lot that might be turned into a park. I'd love to help somebody come in and design an edible landscape there that's using permaculture, that's working on stormwater management, capturing the water that's coming down over from Green Street, you know, really making that a demonstration garden. I'd love to help with that. And then I would have members of each of the organizations that are using that parking lot come in and actually help design the site. And that way they know what's going in there. It reflects what they're doing.
Yes.
But nonprofits, I'd love to help Morningside Shelter do this.
Yes.
Youth services, I'd love to help train youth doing this.
Well, you know, Cimbria, it reminds me a bit. I'm working right now, as a matter of fact, on getting the next issue of Green Energy Times out, and there's an article in there on there's a section on Greenfield, Massachusetts, and the SAGE program, which goes on in Greenfield Community College, has extensions that teach gardening in organic gardening in. I think it's a couple of women's shelters and the local jail.
Great.
So, you know, these are things that I think the skills that a person gets out of a thing like this, I think really go way, way beyond.
They transfer to life skills.
Yeah. They just
As
go
Jed
way,
very eloquently
way
said.
beyond just connection with the soil,
Right.
which is important by itself, growing plants, which is important by itself, but we're talking about a personality transformation that is from within,
Right.
and that can be very beneficial.
George, that's exactly what permaculture is about. We say that permaculture is not a different way to garden, it's a different way to live.
I think that is a great point. We're coming up to the end of our hour, so I think we'd better say goodbye to everybody.
Okay.
Thank you.
I think Tom and I can have Cimbria and company, Susan and Jed, back, hopefully, when you've got more things to report.
That'd be great.
We've got to have
I'd
a
love
progress
to.
report.
Oh, and some pictures
Absolutely.
you
I
could
think
show.
We
Yeah.
need pictures, yeah.
One progress
Give me the
report?
pictures on a
Yeah.
We
thumb
need
drive and
sure.
we can show them.
Okay.
Yeah.
You have email?
two
Yeah.
progress
Okay.
reports. 3 progress reports.
However many Mother Nature wants.
Yeah, and if anyone's interested, they can go to CimbriaB.com. That's CIMBRIA.com. And I'm blogging about this as it's going on. There'll be pictures up there and registration forms and
There's a Facebook page, and we keep
Right.
the Turning Point site Facebook page updated with what's going
Great.
on as well.
right,
Okay.
right. And anyone who wants to join us is more than welcome to do so.
Very good. Well, see you later, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
I want to point out that the sun shines down its power to all the world and makes the wind blow strong as it will. I want to hope gentle rains can fall upon the land so lovely earth can stay lovely still.